With Nick Sirianni set to enter Season 6 at the helm of the Eagles, his players go to bat for him. Is he the most underrated head coach in the NFL? Plus, another interesting turn in the Brendan Sorsby case, why the former college star may actually end up in an NFL training camp this summer. And our top 25 Eagles countdown continues with the man most likely to lock down that second starting safety spot, Marcus Epps. Welcome into Birds Huddle, presented by Toyota, official automotive partner of the NFL. Along with Barrett Brooks, I'm Dave Zangaro. Barrett, you see Nick Sirianni spent his 45th birthday last night at the Phillies game. Not a bad way to spend a birthday. How do you like to spend your birthdays?
I go fishing. That's all I like to do. I enjoy fishing. So I at least go out fishing, some ocean, trying to catch tuna or something like that. But, hey, baseball game is pretty cool also.
Baseball game's not bad.
Right. I mean, I've spent a good, some pretty good times, especially at the Phillies games.
Yeah, it was a good time over there.
Great time.
Hope Nick Sirianni had a good time. And that brings us to our three-point stance presented by Toyota. First up, Nick Sirianni doesn't get enough credit for the Eagles' success. Today, The Athletic's Mike Silver released a profile on the Birds head coach and Sirianni's authenticity. Saquon Barkley had this to say. He doesn't get enough credit at all, in my opinion. I don't get why he doesn't like what he's doing in real time is legendary. If we're being honest, no one talks about it enough. Like, we love to talk about rushing for 2,000 yards. We love to talk about Jalen. We love to talk about the Eagles. But he's like the last one to get brought up, and it doesn't really make sense. So, Barrett, what do you think about Nick Sirianni? Is he underrated?
He is underrated, because him being able to rewrite the ship, him being able to set the culture, him being able to get these guys to play as one, to, be a team, is something, you can't just take for granted. I mean, of course, here in Philadelphia, we kind of do, and I think that's because the way he entered Philadelphia is kind of what they think about, It was a little, I don't know, I'm not going to say goofy, but, it was kind of different.
You can say goofy.
Right,
goofy first.
It was different, but it was during the pre-pandemic, and at that point, nobody really knew what to do. So we're talking about him being a coach going in, capturing a locker room with players that, they didn't want Peterson to really leave. They love Peterson. But, I mean, I love the fact that he comes in, and now he has those guys. They're front and center, riding for him. You don't hear anything about those guys, saying, he's a bad coach or anything like that. They will run through a brick wall for him, and that's the biggest thing. Once you gain the respect of players and you're not lying to them, you're being honest with them, and I think that's the biggest thing. He's very honest to them players. They'll do anything for you. If you can make them better, be honest with them, keep it 100, this culture is great here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I think the reason he's underrated is because the things he does well don't show up easily.
Exactly.
Like, you watch the Los Angeles Rams, you know exactly what Sean McVay is doing. You watch, D'Amico Ryan's defense, you know what he's doing. It's a little tougher to figure out what Nick Sirianni is doing. And it kind of goes back to, like, well, what does he actually do? It's the culture setting. It's the stuff inside of that building. It's harping on fundamentals. It's all the stuff that you can't really see it unless you're in the building every day like those players are. They trust him. They follow him. I understand the criticism around Nick, but a lot of it sometimes goes overboard.
Yeah, and it's it's a shame because, just because you don't call plays does not mean you're a bad coach. I know a lot of coaches that, I was playing with that, they were just, center head pieces. They were just in there to set the culture. They were in there to just, everybody look at them. But then I was also around coaches that it didn't matter. They calling plays, they sucked. Well, he's a great coach. Been to the playoff every year he's been a head coach. He's, been in 2 Super Bowls. He's won a Super Bowl. I mean, tell me how you can get guys to band together like that, win a Super Bowl, and say that he's, underrated. I mean, he's got to be one of the most underrated coaches in the NFL that I've ever seen. They really take him for granted here. We really take him for granted.
Yeah, I think it's all true. And so much of what he does, his players appreciate. I think the big emphasis in that story was about his authenticity. Because from the outside, I think Saquon kind of mentioned it. He's mentioned it before. Like, when he was with the Giants, he hated Nick Sirianni. He's exactly the type of coach that if you're in another market, you're a fan of another team, you're going to hate that guy. He's going to really irritate you. But you got to go by what his players say. And one of my favorite stories I've ever written while Nick Sirianni was the head coach was about him connecting with each player. He finds a way to connect with them, whether it's about, hey, I know this guy who went to your high school or college or whatever it might be. He finds a way to connect with them. It gets them to buy into what he's selling, and it seems to work for them.
Well, I mean, that's huge. That's huge, because then those guys, and it's not just, guys you just follow. I've had coaches that didn't even know my name walking down the hallway. I spent a cup of coffee, like I said, with the Broncos, a cup of coffee with Cleveland, and the coaches really didn't even know your name until you started playing, until you made yourself known. They didn't even know you. This guy, whether he knows you or not, he brings guys in. He plays basketball with them, see what type of competitor you are. That's the type of guy he is, So for him to be that guy that, wears everything on his shoulder, you know exactly what he's feeling because he's going to dictate it to you. He's going to let you know. I love that. I love that.
And the record's the record, right? It's been pretty good. Stance number 2, the Cowboys will be the toughest challenger in the NFC East for the Eagles. Today, the Cowboys reported for mandatory minicamp in Dallas, and that included receiver George Pickens, who will play this season on a 1-year franchise tag. So, Barrett, how worried are you about the Cowboys this year?
Oh, I am worried because the team got better. Defensively, they drafted very, very well. Say what you want to say. They went out, got a really good safety out of Ohio State. They brought guys in, to play that defensive line. Gary from
Green Bay.
From Green Bay. I mean, they're at a point now where they're trying to make that next step, and I think they've done a great job of doing that. And then, you have a guy like George Pickens. He's coming to camp now. I will say this: they take a lot of money from him if you don't report. And plus, he's going to be making $27 million, like $27.2 million being, at camp and going under that franchise tag. That's nothing to sneeze at. I understand he wants a long-term deal, but $27 million, I'll do a lot for that.
Yeah, I figure eventually he would come back. I am surprised how, nice it is that he's coming back in mandatory camp. There's no hold out or hold in, but
he's making life harder on us. We need him to, go down there and
let's see how it goes, because I think there's a chance at some point he gets irritated. But you're right about the Cowboys and just in general, their defense should be better. Their defense was atrocious last year, one of the worst in the league. So, if that offense is still as high-powered as we think it can be, all they have to do defensively is become like an average defense, and all of a sudden that is a team that you have to worry about. And we know what Christian Parker is going to bring down.
Absolutely.
The former Eagles defensive backs coach, now the DC in Dallas. They got him some pieces. You mentioned Caleb Downs. They brought in Rashawn Gary. You have a full season of Quinnen Williams. They have some players on that side of the football. They have a defensive coordinator that should be able to maximize them. Yeah, I think Dallas is a legitimate threat in the NFC East. I don't think they're a threat to win the Super Bowl because I think, like always, if they get in the playoffs, they're going to collapse.
Exactly.
But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about regular season.
And do I think they make it to the playoffs? No, I'm not going to say they're going to make it to the playoffs. But they are a team that, we're going to have to play hard against them, and we have to beat them convincingly.
Yeah, those 2 games against the Cowboys, they're going to be really
Especially
big.
down there.
Especially down there. It's always a tough place. Stance number 3, there will be a lot of interest in Brendan Sorsby in the supplemental draft. The Texas Tech quarterback made the decision last night to forego college football this season in the wake of admitting to gambling on his own team in college. Instead, he'll enter the NFL's supplemental draft, which will be held in late July. The supplemental draft exists for situations just like this, where a player might become ineligible to play in college. If you take that player, though, you have to forfeit that round's pick in next year's regular draft. No player has been taken in the supplemental draft since 2019. So, Barrett, do you think the Eagles will have eyes on Sorsby?
I think that would be opening up a can of worms. I don't think so. Yes, we are a quarterback factory, like they like to say. But, I don't know. He has all the measurables that you want. 6'3", 240, 230 pounds. And he throws a great ball on the run. He's one of those dual threat quarterbacks that everybody loves now, that are a new thing. And he's a smart player. I called, 3 of his games while he was at Cincinnati. He hasn't played down at Texas Tech, but I just believe that he is a quarterback that do very well in the NFL. I mean, a Baker Mayfield-esque type of player.
Yeah, he's someone who, maybe goes in the first round if he comes out of this past draft. It's an interesting discussion for the Eagles because it's very different if you're going to draft a quarterback on day 3 versus day 2.
Right.
So maybe they put in a draft pick and say 4th round, 5th round pick. I could see them doing that. Going above that, though, is a tough sell for me.
All right, yeah. I mean, then you're looking at, Cole Payton, who we just drafted. in the third day. And then you think about, Jalen Hurts, we already haven't signed him to a new contract yet. And then here you are going to supplemental draft. And once you get into them second day and first day picks, it's like, all right, you're really trying to replace me. That'll cause a frenzy here in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
People will be going nuts. They'll be going crazy if they do something like that. So I don't think so. Is he worth it? I mean, I wouldn't mind shaking a tree and, seeing where those leaves fall.
Yeah, if it's the right value. Howie's always about value.
Right.
That's what comes first. Time to continue our countdown of the top 25 most important Eagles. Yesterday, we kicked things off with a look at rookie tight end Eli Stowers. And today we go to the other side of the football, safety Marcus Epps. He seems like the front runner to start next to Drew Makuba on the back end of the defense. So, Barrett, what do you make of Epps being on this list?
I mean, I'm going to tell you the truth. I like Epps. I like the last game I saw him play against the 49ers. He played aggressive. He was out there trying to make plays. He was leading the charge as far as being a guy that, he wants to be here. So, I think at this point they're comfortable with Epps being a starter in this system. We know that, during base, you're going to bring in Coop and he'll be the safety. But, with him being out there, I am, totally in a position where I'm comfortable with Epps being the guy. I love his consistency, and that's the biggest thing. He's very consistent. He's a reliable tackler. He's a box safety. He's okay at covering, but he's best when he's down in the box and coming up and being a sure tackler on this defense. So, I like him a lot.
Yeah, and he has to be on the list, right? Like, if
Absolutely.
He's going to be a starter in this defense, and he's next to a guy in Drew Makuba, who we'll talk about, I'm sure, coming up on this list in the not-too-distant future, who's a young player. So, if you have the veteran out there, he's going to have to take on a little bit of that load with a young player next to him.
No, and I think he can do that. I think, because he's been here in Philadelphia, he knows the town, he knows what's going on there. And on the field, he has enough experience being here as a starter, working his way into the starting lineup, and then turn around and going to the Raiders and playing okay. I think he has enough to garner the respect from Drew Makuba, and he'll believe him, and I think he'll play well for us.
You just mentioned it. Epps was a starter on that 2022 Eagles team that went to the Super Bowl. He left that offseason for a multi-year deal with the Raiders. He came back to the Eagles just before the start of last season, ended up starting 5 games, including the playoffs. So, Barrett, say he's the guy. He wins that competition. He's a starter. Where's your comfort level with Epps in this defense?
I think that he'd be a surefire. I think he's athletically a level above what we had on Blankenship, but we have to see how he becomes a leader. Can he be that same guy that, to carry the ear of the defense like Blankenship did? I will see that, but I love how aggressive he was the last time I saw him on the field. What have you done for me lately? He did a lot in that game to show me, yes, he belongs in the NFL. He belongs to be a starter here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, pretty high floor, too. A guy who's played this much football.
Exactly.
You kind of know what you're going to get. I think Vic Fangio likes him, too. And earlier this offseason, Vic Fangio was asked about the battle at that starting safety spot. Let's take a listen.
It's open. I think Marcus is someone that will have put up good claim to it. In base, it will be Cooper. When we go to nickel and Coop comes up and plays nickel, it'll be Epps. We're taking a good look at Michael Carter back there. Who else am I forgetting? Yeah, Andre Sam. And then we signed an undrafted free agent, Gush. JT Gray has been mainly a special teams player, but, he'll get a look. So we'll look at all those guys. It's an open competition.
Here you see what the Eagles have at the position, Barrett. Are you comfortable not only with Epps as a starter, but also with the depths behind him, or do you think another move is coming?
Well, Howie, and we know how he likes to shake a tree at everybody, hey, what's the chances we might be able to get him and Grant? Somebody we talking about, Grant Delpit, we'll talk about in a minute. But when you look at, I am very comfortable going into the season and having Drew Makuba and Marcus Epps as starters on this team. And then, eventually Carter, he has to, Michael Carter said he has to work his way into being a full-time safety. He's been a slot corner for the majority of his career. Mm-hmm. So, we can see if he can play safety. I don't think it's a far-fetched that he can. I mean, he looked pretty good out there in camp right now, but, he won't have the pads on and everything. But, you have the experience right there with Carter. You have the experience with Epps. We'll see. Sam's been here, for a while, And at this point, he hasn't broke the starting lineup. He hasn't broke really defense a lot, besides with injuries and coming in. But, a pretty good special teams player. So do we have enough of safety? We have enough to go out there and win a game right now with them.
I know you like Grant Delpit, but maybe they'll get the camp first, see what they have in these guys, and if they need to make a move or not.
Well, I wouldn't mind him at all. He's probably going to be on the bench this year. So.
He might be.